Sometimes the danger isn't the stranger in the shadows. Sometimes it's the person who smiles at you over the hedge. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, residents thought they were safe. They thought the only thing the HOA cared about was lawn care and trash pickup. But when one woman was caught spying on her neighbors, it didn't just expose her obsession. It exposed a secret so shocking, so dangerous, that it shattered the entire community. This isn't just a story about spying. It's about power. It's about secrets. And it's about what happens when the watcher becomes the one exposed. Maple Hollow wasn't wealthy, but it was proud. A suburb outside Denver, rows of two-story homes lined quiet cul-de-sacs. The HOA prided itself on keeping the street safe, clean, and family-friendly. On paper, it was paradise. In reality, it was a pressure cooker. Every neighbor knew each other. They waved politely. They hosted block parties. But behind the smiles were whispers. Who wasn't keeping up their yard? Whose teenagers stayed out too late? Who didn't fit in? And at the center of it all was Elaine Whitford. Elaine Whitford was 53 years old. Short blonde bob, always in pastel sweaters, always clutching her leather HOA binder. She was the self-proclaimed eyes of the neighborhood. Her husband, Mark, worked long hours as a tax attorney. Her children were grown and gone. And Elaine needed something to fill her days. She found it in control. Her house sat at the corner of Maple Hollow Lane, perfect for watching every car, every person. She sat at her bay window with binoculars, jotting notes in spiral-bound pads. Most neighbors just rolled their eyes. That's Elaine being Elaine. But they didn't know how far Elaine was willing to go. Across the street lived Rachel and David Morales. Rachel was 34, a teacher, warm, friendly, known for organizing bake sales. David, 36, worked construction, tall with calloused hands and a soft voice. They had 2 children, Sophia, age 8, and Mateo, age 5. They weren't rich, but they were happy. Their yard was full of chalk drawings and plastic toys. Their home smelled of home-cooked meals. They were everything Elaine wasn't: connected, loved, content. And maybe that's why she started watching them more closely. It started small. Neighbors noticed Elaine jotting notes when Rachel gardened or when David worked on his truck. She would linger near their driveway, checking for violations. Then came the cameras. Elaine installed a security camera facing directly into Morales' yard. When confronted, she claimed it was for her protection. Soon, Rachel found Elaine standing near her hedge at night, pretending to walk her dog but staring too long. David grew angry. She's watching us, recording us. Rachel brushed it off at first, but soon she felt it too, the weight of Elaine's gaze. One summer night, Rachel put the kids to bed and stepped outside to grab laundry from the line. That's when she saw it, a faint red light blinking from her hedge. She pulled back the branches and froze. A hidden camera pointed directly at her kitchen window. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. David ripped the camera out and stormed across the street, banging on Elaine's door. She answered calmly, pastel sweater draped over her shoulders. "Can I help you, David?" "You planted a camera in my yard." Elaine didn't flinch. "It's community property. I'm allowed to monitor for safety." David nearly exploded. Rachel pulled him back. They called the police. But when officers arrived, Elaine smiled sweetly. "It must have blown over from my yard. I'm just trying to keep the neighborhood safe." The police filed a report, but nothing happened until Rachel posted the footage online. David smashing the hidden camera, neighbors gathering, Elaine smirking. The video went viral in the community, and that's when the real story began to unravel. Detective Harper Collins was assigned the case. 42 years old, sharp-eyed and skeptical. She'd seen HOA disputes before: barking dogs, noisy teenagers, parking complaints. But cameras in hedges? That was different. Collins pulled HOA records. She noticed a pattern. In the last 3 years, at least 5 families had left Maple Hollow suddenly. Their houses sold under market value. Their departure preceded by anonymous HOA complaints. And every complaint signed off by Elaine Whitford. Why did Elaine do it? Interviews painted her as lonely, obsessive, Friends describe her as controlling even in high school, with her children gone and her husband distant. Elaine filled the void with surveillance. But Collins suspected more than loneliness. Elaine wasn't just watching. She was documenting. And documentation meant leverage. At first, suspicion turned toward Mark, Elaine's husband, a tax attorney with access to sensitive financial data. Maybe Elaine was spying to aid him in blackmail? But when Collins interviewed Mark, he seemed more broken than complicit. "She's not the woman I married," he admitted. "She keeps files. On everyone. Files." The word stuck with Collins. With a warrant, police searched Elaine's home. In the basement, they found dozens of spiral notebooks, labeled by address. Morales family. Notes on when they returned, Rachel's clothing, David's truck repairs. Gwen's. When their teenage son brought friends home, times, dates. Thompson's. Wine deliveries, arguments overheard through open windows. And on Elaine's computer, hundreds of hours of footage. Hidden cameras not just in the Morales hedge, but in other yards too. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Among the files, Collins found financial documents, bank transfers, real estate deals, HOA property valuations. Elaine wasn't just spying out of obsession. She was collecting data to manipulate property values. By documenting families' bad behavior or creating a paper trail of criminal activity, she justified fines, foreclosures, and forced sales. And every time a family left, a shell company bought the property cheap. A company tied back to Elaine's husband's law firm. It was an obsession. It was a scheme. When confronted, Elaine finally cracked. In interrogation, her facade slipped. "They don't belong here," she hissed. "They ruin the neighborhood. They drive down value. Someone has to protect this place." Collins stared. "So you planted cameras, harassed families, forced them out?" Elaine's voice dropped. "You don't understand. It's bigger than me. If I didn't do it, they would." "They?" Collins pressed. But Elaine shut down. Elaine was charged with illegal surveillance, stalking, and conspiracy. The community was rocked. Families realized the HOA wasn't protecting them. It was exploiting them. Rachel and David, once victims, became leaders in a fight to dissolve the HOA. But Collins couldn't shake Elaine's words. "It's bigger than me. If I didn't do it, they would." Weeks later, as the Morales family settled back into a sense of peace, David checked his mailbox. Inside was an unmarked envelope, photos of his children, walking to school, and a single note. Elaine was only the beginning. David Morales gripped the photos with shaking hands. There was Sophia, his 8-year-old daughter, backpack slung over her shoulders. There was Mateo, just 5, clinging to his sister's hand. The photos were close, too close, as if taken from just across the street. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "They know where our kids walk. They're watching us." David wanted to storm across the neighborhood, to confront someone, anyone. But the truth was more terrifying. They didn't know who they were. Detective Harper Collins sat in the Morales kitchen, flipping through the photos. "This isn't Elaine's style," she said firmly. She was obsessive, yes, but she documented from a distance. She didn't leave threats. "So, who did this?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. Collins looked grim. "That's what I'm going to find out." But Elaine was right about one thing. She wasn't working alone. Collins visited Elaine at the county jail. Elaine looked disheveled, stripped of her pastel perfection, but her eyes still burned with that same cold fire. "They came for me, didn't they?" Elaine asked as soon as Collins sat down. "Who's they?" Collins pressed. Elaine smirked. "You'll find out. You always do. But when you do, ask yourself, who's really in charge here? The HOA? The board? Or the people above them?" Collins leaned forward. "Are the Morales family in danger?" Elaine's silence was louder than words. Collins dug deeper into HOA records. She discovered something strange. The Maple Hollow HOA wasn't independent. It was managed by a larger property association firm, Evergreen Residential Management. Evergreen wasn't just local. It controlled dozens of neighborhoods across the state. And every time a family left under suspicious circumstances, Evergreen bought the house cheap, flipped it, and made a massive profit. Elaine wasn't just spying for fun. She was gathering dirt to justify Evergreen's property grabs. Word spread fast. Some neighbors were furious at Elaine. Others whispered that maybe she'd been right, that certain families didn't belong. The Morales family became a flashpoint. Supporters dropped off food and cards. Others avoided eye contact, fearing association. Rachel told David, "We can't live like this, not knowing who's behind it, not knowing who we can trust." But David refused to leave. That's what they want, to scare us out. One night, David came home late from a construction job. As he pulled into the driveway, he froze. Spray painted across his garage door in dripping red paint were the words, "Get out." Rachel screamed when she saw it. The children cried. The police came, took photos, promised patrols. But Collins knew what this was. Escalation. Whoever had sent the photos was now making their move. Collins zeroed in on a suspect, a man named Paul Grayson, a board member known for backing Elaine on every decision. Grayson denied everything. "I just follow rules. I didn't put cameras in anyone's yard." But when Collins checked his financials, she found deposits from Evergreen Residential Management. It looked like the smoking gun, until Grayson's house was torched a week later. Collins stood outside the smoldering ruins, realizing the truth. Grayson wasn't the mastermind. He was just another pawn, eliminated for knowing too much. Rachel began to unravel. She jumped at shadows, slept with the lights on, checked the locks 5 times a night. David tried to stay strong, but the weight of protecting his family crushed him. He began snapping at coworkers, withdrawing from friends. Sophia stopped riding her bike outside. Mateo went to bed again. The Morales family wasn't just being watched. They were being broken. Late one night, Collins got a call from an anonymous number. A man's voice whispered, "Elaine wasn't the problem. She was a cover. If you want the truth, look at Evergreen's Lodge, out by the highway. That's where they keep the files." The line went dead. Collins traced it, but the call came from a burner. Still, she had a lead. Collins drove to the address. A rundown warehouse on the edge of town. No signs, just a rusted gate. Inside, she found rows of filing cabinets, boxes of documents, laptops, and inside those files, proof. Evergreen had orchestrated a campaign of surveillance, intimidation, and harassment across multiple neighborhoods. Families were targeted, forced out, and their homes flipped for profit. But as Collins copied the files, she heard footsteps. 2 men in black jackets entered. One of them carried a crowbar. "Who the hell are you?" one barked. Collins froze. The next morning, Rachel opened her door to get the paper. On her porch was a package. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a spiral notebook. On the cover, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Morales family, updated file." Rachel flipped it open. Inside were photos, recent ones, of her, of David, of her children sleeping in their beds. At the bottom of the page, scrawled in red ink, "Detective Collins won't save you. She's next." When the 2 men stormed into the warehouse, Collins had only seconds to react. She ducked behind a filing cabinet, clutching her phone. One man swung the crowbar, slamming metal. "Come out, lady. We don't want to hurt you much." Her pulse hammered. She grabbed a box of files and bolted for the back exit. The men gave chase, footsteps echoing. She crashed through the rusted door into the night, sprinted to her car and floored it. As headlights flared in her rearview mirror, Collins realized something chilling. They weren't trying to stop her. They were trying to follow her. Collins led them in circles, finally losing the tail near the interstate. She pulled into a gas station, hands shaking. Inside the stolen box of files, she found financial records, Evergreen shell companies, HOA contracts, even references to relocation units. Relocation? She wasn't sure what it meant, but the thought made her stomach twist. If Evergreen could force families out, where did they go? Meanwhile, the Morales home felt like a cage. Rachel double-checked the locks, refusing to let the children play outside. Sophia asked, "Mom, are we in trouble?" David tried to stay strong, but anger boiled inside him. One night, he grabbed a baseball bat and sat on the porch until sunrise, glaring at every car that passed. The spiral notebook never left their kitchen table. The images inside were burned into their minds, their children sleeping, their faces through windows. It wasn't just spying anymore. It was terror. Collins returned to the jail to confront Elaine. "You said you weren't working alone." "Who are they?" Collins demanded. Elaine chuckled bitterly. "Evergreen? They're just the middlemen. You think they stop at property? No. They want lives. Families are numbers to them. And once you're on their list..." Her eyes flashed with something between fear and triumph. "You don't get off." Collins slammed her notebook shut. "You're going to testify." Elaine smirked. "You think I'll live long enough?" The Morales noticed more signs they were being watched. A white van parked near the school every morning. Unknown cars idling on their street at night. Drones buzzing faintly above their backyard. Rachel called Collins in panic. "They're everywhere. We can't breathe. We can't live like this." Collins promised to increase patrols. But she knew the truth. Local police wouldn't touch Evergreen. Not without hard proof. That night, Collins returned to her apartment. The door was ajar. Inside, her files were gone. Her laptop smashed. And on her kitchen counter, in red marker, someone had scrawled, "Stop digging or we bury you." Collins sat in the wreckage, realization crashing over her. Evergreen wasn't just targeting the Morales family. They were targeting her too. One evening, Rachel noticed their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Dalka, slipping a package under her arm. When confronted, the elderly woman broke down. "They paid me to watch, to take notes. They said if I didn't, they'd raise my dues until I lost my house." Rachel's heart sank. It wasn't just outsiders. It was neighbors turning against neighbors. Trust had shattered. Collins met secretly with an old contact, a data analyst named Jordan. Together, they traced Evergreen shell companies. One name popped up again and again, Silverwood Holdings. Silverwood wasn't just about property. It was connected to private security firms, lobbying groups, even campaign donations. Collins realized the truth. Elaine wasn't a mastermind. Evergreen wasn't even the top. Silverwood was. And Maple Hollow? Just one of many test sites. Late one night, David woke to shattering glass. Someone had thrown a brick through their living room window. Attached was a note. "Last chance. Get out." As David grabbed the bat, he saw two masked men in the yard. He charged outside, but they melted into the dark. Rachel screamed from upstairs. They were in the kids' room. They took photos. David ran upstairs. On the floor by Mateo's bed lay a Polaroid. Sophia and Mateo sleeping. Taken just minutes before. The next morning, Collins arrived with officers. The Morales family sat shaken, clutching the Polaroid. Collins promised protection, but she knew they were slipping out of her control. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a video. Grainy, shaky footage of a dark warehouse. Inside, rows of cages. Families huddled together. And a voice whispered behind the camera. "Evergreen doesn't relocate families. They disappear them." The video cut out. Collins stared at her screen, horror dawning, because in the final frame, barely visible in the corner of the cage, was the Morales children's favorite stuffed bear. Detective Harper Collins sat with her analyst Jordan, replaying the grainy video frame by frame. Families huddled in cages. Concrete floors. Fluorescent lights. "Industrial setting," Jordan muttered. "Looks like a warehouse. Notice the pipes along the wall? That's municipal." Collins leaned closer. There, in the corner, a stuffed bear with a missing eye. Rachel had described it perfectly. Mateo's favorite toy. This wasn't coincidence. The Morales family was being marked. Rachel was unraveling. She kept the children home from school, terrified of the white van that still parked near the playground. David paced the house at night, clutching the bat, eyes bloodshot. One evening he snapped, I can't just sit here waiting for them to come. We need to leave. Rachel shook her head. If we run, they win. And what about those other families in that video? The silence between them said it all. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. Collins called an emergency HOA meeting at Maple Hollow. Residents packed the clubhouse, whispering nervously. Some looked angry. Others looked afraid. Collins stood at the front. Elaine Whitford wasn't acting alone. This HOA is being used by Evergreen Residential, and Evergreen is forcing families out. Gasps, murmurs. Board President Harold Renshaw stood, red-faced. This is slander. Our HOA has nothing to do with Evergreen beyond management. But Collins held up the files she'd smuggled out of the lodge, then explained the payments, explained the shell companies, explained the missing families. The room erupted, and in the chaos, Collins noticed something. 2 men at the back, watching silently. Not residents. Suits too sharp. Eyes too cold. When she looked again, they were gone. The next morning, the Morales neighbor, Mrs. Dalka, the elderly woman who admitted she'd been coerced into spying, was found dead in her home. Official cause, heart failure. But Rachel saw the bruises on her arms when the stretcher wheeled by. They killed her, she whispered to Collins, because she talked. Collins clenched her jaw. Silverwood wasn't just silencing whistleblowers. They were cleaning house. Collins returned to the warehouse with federal contact, Agent Ruiz. But when they arrived, the place was gutted. Files gone. Cages empty. Only one thing remained. A single Polaroid taped to the wall. It showed Collins, standing outside the Morales home, from the night before. Written beneath, "Your turn." Collins arranged temporary relocation for the Morales family, a safe house on the outskirts of Denver. But even there, paranoia followed. A car idled too long at the end of the dirt road. Sophia swore she saw a drone buzzing near her window. David confronted Collins. "You said you could protect us, but we're still being hunted." Collins admitted the truth. "They have resources I can't touch. If Silverwood wants you gone, they won't stop." Rachel whispered, almost to herself. "Then maybe it's time we stop them first." Jordan traced Silverwood's financial web to a private security firm, Iron Gate Solutions. Iron Gate provided community protection services to neighborhoods managed by Evergreen. But Collins found something darker. Iron Gate had contracts with immigration detention centers, private prisons, and relocation facilities. The cages in the video weren't just intimidation. They were part of a pipeline. Families forced out of neighborhoods weren't vanishing. They were being processed. One night, the safe house alarm blared. David rushed outside to find the garage door spray painted. "Time's up." Inside on the kitchen counter was a flash drive. No signs of forced entry. Collins plugged it into her laptop. Video played. The Morales children, Sophia and Mateo, asleep in their safe house beds. Rachel screamed, "They know where we are." Collins knew they couldn't run forever. She gathered Rachel and David. "We have two choices. Hide until they find us, or go on offense. Hit Silverwood where it hurts." David's jaw set. "What do we need to do?" Collins laid out the plan. Infiltrate Silverwood's upcoming HOA conference downtown, a gathering of board members, executives, and lobbyists. Inside, there would be contracts, servers, maybe even proof of the relocation scheme. But it was dangerous. Too dangerous for civilians. Rachel grabbed her hand. "They've already put us in this. We're not sitting out now." The night before the conference, Collins returned to her apartment to prepare. Her front door was ajar. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs. Photos of her. Photos of Rachel. Photos of David. Photos of Sophia and Mateo. Every move they'd made for the last 3 weeks. And in the center, pinned with a knife, was a printed page, the Silverwood Holdings logo. And beneath it, in bold black letters, "Welcome to the family." Tomorrow, Silverwood is hosting a private conference at the Marriott downtown. Board members, lobbyists, HOA leaders, all in one place. If we can access their servers or get recordings, we can prove the relocation scheme. David frowned. "How do we get in?" Rachel spoke before Collins could answer. "I used to help run PDA fundraisers. I can pass as an event organizer. Give me a badge and clipboard, and no one will question me. Collins hesitated, then nodded. All right, but the kids stay here with protection. Sophia clutched Rachel's sleeve. Mom, don't go. Rachel kissed her forehead. I have to, honey. For all of us. The Marriott buzzed with chatter. Men in tailored suits, women in pearls and pencil skirts, all sipping champagne beneath banners that read, Silverwood Holdings, building stronger communities. Rachel, hair tied back, clipboard in hand, moved with nervous precision. David walked beside her, carrying a box of conference supplies. Collins followed, dressed in a fitted blazer, her badge forged to look official. They passed through without question, and inside the spectacle chilled them. On stage, Silverwood CEO, Charles Danforth, silver-haired, commanding, declared, Our mission is not just property management. It's social engineering. We decide who belongs. And when necessary, we help those who don't belong relocate. Applause thundered. Rachel's blood ran cold. Collins slipped away, guided by Jordan's voice in her earpiece. Server room is 2 floors down, West Wing. Badge readers, but you're clear for now. She pushed through staff corridors, heart pounding. Meanwhile, Rachel and David blended in with attendees, overhearing hushed conversations. 2 more families relocated last week. Profits are up 23% since Iron Gate expanded surveillance. Denver is just the beginning. Next quarter, Dallas. David whispered, This isn't local, it's national. Collins reached the server room, swiped a clone badge, and slipped inside. Rows of humming machines glowed blue. She plugged in Jordan's drive. Copying everything, Jordan whispered. Emails, contracts, video archives. We'll have proof. Then Collins froze. On the monitor, folders appeared. Morales_family PDF. Collins_profile. Docs. Phase 3 implementation. .mp4. Against her better judgment, she opened the video. On screen, a Silverwood executive addressing Iron Gate contractors. Phase 3 begins next quarter. The Morales case has been instructive. Fear is effective, but relocation ensures compliance. Collins will be neutralized soon. After that, expansion continues nationwide. Collins yanked the drive. Someone had planned her downfall in advance. Back in the ballroom, Rachel and David tried to leave, but 2 men in black suits blocked the exit. Enjoying the show? One sneered. Rachel gripped David's hand. We're staff. The man leaned closer. You're Morales, aren't you? We've been expecting you. Before David could react, the man tapped his earpiece. We've got them. Collins burst into the ballroom, spotting Rachel and David flanked by suits. She shouted, Federal investigation. Everyone stay where you are. The room went silent. Gasps echoed. Rachel and David used the chaos to slip away. Collins covered them as the crowd erupted. Executives shouted. Security scrambled. They pushed through the kitchen exit, running into the night. But Collins knew this wasn't victory. Silverwood would spin it. They'd cover their tracks. And worse, she realized as she looked down, the drive was gone. Someone had pickpocketed in the chaos. Back at the safe house, Rachel wept into her children's hair. David paced, furious. We had them. We had proof. Collins slammed her fist on the table. Silverwood knew we'd come. This was staged. Rachel looked up, eyes wide. Staged. Collins nodded grimly. That conference wasn't just for them. It was for us. They wanted us to see. They wanted us scared. David whispered, and it worked. 2 days later, a package arrived at the Morales home. Inside was a stolen drive. And a note. You want proof? Here it is. But you'll never make it public. Because by the time you try, everyone will know your secret. Rachel frowned. Our secret. David shook his head. We don't have one. But Collins' face turned pale. Yes, you do. Silverwood doesn't bluff. If they say they have dirt, they do. That night, Collins plugged the drive into her laptop. Inside were contracts, relocation files, surveillance videos. Enough to expose Silverwood. But then she found another folder, labeled Morales classified. Inside, grainy footage of David from years ago in a bar fight. A police report from Rachel's teenage years, shoplifting, expunged long ago. Financial records showing debts, arguments caught on camera, even private therapy notes. Rachel gasped, "How did they get this?" Collins whispered, "They've been building files for years. On all of us." As Collins scrolled through Morales' file, her laptop screen went black. Then white text appeared on the screen. "Nice try, detective. We own the narrative now. If you release anything, the Morales family burns first." Rachel clutched David's arm. "They'll ruin us." David's jaw tightened. "No, they already have." And then, the lights in the safe house flickered. Outside, engines rumbled. Rachel pulled back the curtain. SUVs. 5 of them. Black. Unmarked. Pulling up the dirt road. The engines cut. Doors slammed. David gripped the baseball bat. Standing at the window, Rachel clutched her children. Collins drew her sidearm. 5 SUVs. 10, maybe 12 men. All in black jackets. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Detective Collins. Morales family. Step outside. Let's talk." Collins whispered. "They don't want to kill us. Not yet. They want to scare us into silence." But when one of the men fired a single shot into the dirt road, Rachel screamed. "Tell me that was just for show." Collins had 2 options. Step outside, negotiate, and risk being taken. Broadcast the Silverwood files to the world immediately, risking retaliation. She turned to David and Rachel. "If I release this, they'll drag your names through the mud. Every mistake you've ever made will be front-page news." Rachel's voice cracked. "They're already destroying us. Do it." David clenched his fists. "We won't be pawns anymore." Collins opened her laptop, plugged in the drive, and connected to Jordan remotely. "Go live," she ordered. Jordan's voice crackled through. "Streaming now. Contracts, videos, relocation files, all of it. Silverwood's crimes hit the internet in real time. HOA corruption, surveillance, relocation camps." The evidence was undeniable. Outside, the men realized what was happening. One shouted into his radio. Engines roared to life. Then headlights retreated down the dirt road. They weren't here to kill. They were here to contain. And they'd just lost control. Within 24 hours, the story exploded. News anchors replayed Silverwood executives bragging about social engineering. Viral clips showed the cages, the contracts, the relocation schemes. Protests erupted outside Maple Hollow and beyond. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Federal investigations launched, but so did Silverwood's counterattack. Tabloids smeared David as a violent drunk. Rachel's teenage shoplifting surfaced. Even Collins was accused of fabricating evidence. The Morales family became both heroes and targets. Praised by some, vilified by others. Elaine Whitford watched the chaos unfold from her jail cell, smirking. When a reporter asked her thoughts, she whispered through the bars, "I told you, I wasn't the villain. I was the mirror." Within a week, she was found dead. Suicide, officials claimed, but Collins knew better. Silverwood Holdings collapsed under federal scrutiny. Executives arrested. Irongate contract dissolved. But the damage was done. Families across multiple states had been displaced, their lives shattered. Many would never return. The Morales family stayed in Maple Hollow, but nothing was the same. Sophia refused to sleep without the lights on. Mateo woke crying from nightmares. David and Rachel carried scars, not on their bodies, but in their trust. Collins transferred to a federal task force, vowing to keep fighting corruption in HOAs and property management. It began with an HOA wife spying through her window. But Elaine Whitford was never the real story. She was a symptom. The disease ran deeper. Because behind every camera, every file, every violation, there was something bigger, power. And power doesn't need guns or knives when there's fear. Silverwood was exposed. But how many more companies hide in plain sight, deciding who belongs and who disappears? And how many of us would even notice? The lesson is simple. privacy isn't just about cameras and hedges. It's about control. And the question, dear viewers, is yours. If someone was watching you, not just your yard, but your life, would you even know?